Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Way I See It. Today is another one of my interview episodes, and I'm interviewing Jennifer Cook from First Baptist Church of Snellville. Thank you so much for watching. Please tune into some of my other videos. On this show, I like to do some interviews. Most of my episodes are just me talking and explaining about biblical concepts, trying to help people strengthen and deepen their Christian worldview. I also talk about current cultural events, or I will apply a biblical worldview to cultural events. But today is one of the interview episodes, and I always love those, and I know my viewers do as well. So here we go. So here I am with Jennifer Cook. We're at First Baptist of Snellville. So tell everyone what you do.
I am the Women's Ministry Director for First Baptist Church Snellville. And I've been that probably, 5 years or so.
Really? Only 5? But you've been here for a long time.
Been here since 1994.
Wow, okay. So yeah, and she's fantastic. And so tell everybody how we know each other.
I met Rachel in 2015.
You
friend,
remember this?
I do. Your friend Chris Sanuga invited you.
Yep.
And she came, and she's been coming to our mom's group ever since.
We invited each other. I invited her to BSF, and she invited me to mom's. And so then I ended up, for a while I was coming on Tuesdays also for that ministry that Amy Boyles was doing. And so I would be here 3 days a week. I would be here on Tuesdays, come on Wednesdays for BSF, come on Thursdays for mom's. So I just wanted to interview Jennifer because she has such a interesting story that I've just heard in bits and pieces over the last 5 years being at mom's. And I'd like, and you know, for my interviews, I really like to just get people to share their stories so that the viewers can maybe find a point of connection and can see why someone might think differently than you or why they might think the same as you in certain ways. And I like to find people that I think have interesting stories or interesting perspectives, and I picked you.
Very honored.
So we're going to start at the beginning. Tell me about when you were born and a little bit of your, or as much of your life growing up, you know, as you want to.
Sounds good. Well, I was born here in Atlanta, Georgia, Crawford Long Hospital, which is no longer Crawford Long Hospital. Very sad to say. So probably when I was about 5 years old, we moved, we being my mother and father and my brother, we moved to Houston, Texas. And we lived there for 13 years. My mother was very, very close with her mother, and my grandmother was from Texas. And so when my grandmother decided, when I was about 5, she wanted to head back, we all followed her. So a little codependency there, but that's okay. That's another story. So about 5 years old, we moved to Houston, and that's where I grew up and graduated from high school there. And eventually at 18, I moved back to Atlanta to get away and be on my own.
So tell me about your childhood. Now, you say you moved there with your mom and dad and your grandmother.
Yes.
I mean, were you with your grandmother or you were just following your grandmother?
Following.
Okay. And did you grow up in a household of faith or non-faith? Or
well, we started going to a Nazarene church, and I don't know much about that. But that's when my mom and my dad started walking with the Lord, and they both got saved in their 20s.
Okay.
And then from there, we ended up going to First Baptist Church of Houston, Texas. And Dr. John Bassanio was the senior pastor. He's since passed. But that's where we plugged in, and we went pretty regular. As life went on, we got more sporadic, and I ended up just going when somebody would take me. But that's where I asked Jesus into my heart. That's where I got saved. January 8th, 1978, I was 9 years old, and 3 weeks later, I got baptized. It was one of the super churches, one of the mega churches before mega church was in.
Yeah.
And it was huge. It was a 3-story balcony. It really looked like a auditorium that you would see maybe in a big college. I can very distinctly remember even the smell of the place. I know that sounds strange, but I can remember it.
I can remember the church I grew up in too. You know, certain smells do bring back memories.
It does, and it had a smell, a good smell. And I can remember the hallways were huge, and I remember when we'd get there early, I would go into the classrooms, the empty classrooms, and I would write on the dry erase boards. It was good memories. It was very good memories for me.
Now, why do you think your attendance got more sporadic over time?
My family was not a healthy family, and I don't mean health-wise. I have a saying I say, unhealthy people act unhealthy. Rude people act rude. Unkind people act unkind. I mean, it follows suit. Well, my family wasn't healthy. I alluded earlier a little bit to codependency. So we had a codependent relationship with my mother and her mother. And just the family unit itself was not a very healthy family unit. So when we were on fire, we were on fire. But when we weren't, we weren't. Now, I didn't know we were dysfunctional. I had no idea. I just figured everybody was like us. I figured out much later that not many people were like us, or at least so I thought. But we were dysfunctional. And so when you're in a dysfunctional family, you act dysfunctional, and that's what we did. We sporadically went, because we were very up and we were very down, and but I remember during the up times, that's when I asked Jesus into my heart. So praise God, that's when I made that decision, because I was going to really need it later on.
Yeah. Now, what was the kind of, when someone does that, when they're really gung-ho and they're on fire and they're there, and then suddenly they're kind of not there, something else has gotten in the way.
Yes.
What got in the way?
My mother had, my father was disabled. He had a car accident when he was 13, and he had seizures. So you could say he was epileptic, but not really.
Diagnosed epileptic.
It was from a car accident. So he was considered disabled. And of course, when my mother married him, she was so in love. But after, I don't know, 12, 13 years of marriage, being someone's nursemaid is not as romantic as it is when you're in love. So things started to fail in the marriage, and eventually they divorced when I was 13. So at that point, she found a new man, and Dad was kicked to the curb. And
now, did you have any relationship with him going forward, or was he kind of out of your life, or
yes,
did you split your time between Mom and Dad?
I lived with Mom, and Dad had moved to Florida and started his own life, and really didn't have much contact. But things got really bad about 12 to 13. In fairness to my mother, she wanted to live like she had been this nursemaid for years, and now all of a sudden she found herself free, and she lost a lot of weight, and she was feeling young and pretty and wanted to have fun, and her 12-year-old and 7-year-old son, her 12-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son were really in the way. So I don't know that she sat up at night and says, gee, I think I'll abuse and neglect my children. I don't think it was that. I think it happened over time. She just began to live her life. And Brian, my brother, was 7, so you can't really get rid of him. But the 12, 13-year-old, you can kind of her away, because I'm self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And so
go do something on your own, honey.
That's right. And so there began, probably from 12 to 18, just extreme neglect, abuse and neglect.
Now, with your brother, because he was younger, did he suffer abuse because he couldn't get away or do his own thing?
No,
or did
she seemed okay with him. I was more of the threat. If you will. So
I will say this. I mean, I don't know your mother or your situation. I just know in general, there's already a strain between mothers and daughters at that age.
Yes.
Because you're becoming a teenager and, have an attitude or whatever, and have your own life and your own decisions. Yes. So I would think without the support of being in a stable marriage, especially if she herself is kind of looking for romantic attachments, there's a sort of a competition. I don't mean competition like she thought you were going to steal her man or something, but there's still some sort of dynamic there.
Yes, and a mother-daughter relationship can be challenging on a good day.
Yeah.
And I was a very compliant child. I wasn't trouble.
Yeah.
I was just in the way. I was in the way. Everything about me was in the way. So I got a job and was completely self-sufficient from 13 to 18. But inside, I was broken and I was hurt and it was neglect. Today, defects would have come.
Yeah.
And taken us both out of that house. And there's plenty more that I won't burn your ears off by telling you.
People are going, tell us more.
Tell us the details. No, they're sordid. I'll just say not to defame the dead because she's now deceased, but it was bad. It was not good. And
so did you go to church at all between, say, 13 and 18, or did your grandmother take you? When did your grandmother pass away?
She passed away much, much later. So my grandmother had, again, wanted to live her life. She'd moved to Hawaii. She and my grandfather packed up, and they were gone.
So they weren't even in Texas at this point.
So we all dragged to Texas to see her and be with her, and then she just jumps up and moves to Hawaii with her husband. And so I was left alone, literally alone. But there were people that poured into my life. My counselor in high school was very instrumental. And luckily I wasn't trouble. So I wasn't going to jail. I wasn't doing anything like that. Yeah. But I was lonely and I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't have any parental guidance. I had no one to say, let's walk this way, not that way. Yeah. So, and there was abuse, and it was a very hard time. I had to do counseling to work through it, and I did counseling in my 20s, and I'm a pro counsel. Okay, that does miracles for your life. It's like a ball of yarn, and you just get to untangle it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Now, you say you moved back to Atlanta at 18.
I did. I ran screaming.
Did you come to college, or did you come to work, or did you just come to I'm going to conquer the world?
No, I wanted to always be an anesthesiologist. I had since I was young. And so I came here, and I went to Agnes Scott for a while. Oh, wow. But I was on my own. I had no parental help with anything. So I worked in the accounting office and part-time, but that just didn't cut it. I mean, when I say I had no support, zero. So I still had to pay car insurance. I still had to pay for my gas. And so after a while, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do school, and they had tried to scholarship me everything they could, but working for pennies in the accounting office is not really doing it. So I eventually had to go to work, and I went to work at SunTrust Banks, went to work full-time, and worked there for many, many years, which is where I met my husband. So that was a good thing. But I ended up leaving Agnes Scott, got a full-time job, and then went to Georgia State part-time.
Did you finish up that degree eventually?
No, I didn't.
Did you finish up a degree eventually?
I didn't, and that's kind of a
do you feel like, I mean, obviously
sore spot in a way.
I was going to say you had a fantastic life. I mean, your story now at this point, I'm on the other side of it, has been great.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to shame you for not finishing college, but I didn't know how you
going to need more therapy.
I didn't know
how
you personally felt about it.
I dated someone for 4 years when I got here. Not my husband now. And he was working on his PhD at Georgia Tech. Ooh. And so I stayed in school for a while, but then that relationship should have ended before it ended. It ended, and I eventually met my husband at SunTrust Banks, and we met and married in 1992, and by 1994 had our first baby.
Now, how did you meet him? I mean, what did he do?
We both worked on the same floor. This is kind of a cute little story. We worked on the same floor, and I was in an office that had glass windows, and my office faced the window where I could see out into the lobby, where I think it was like the 13th or 14th floor. Wow. And so I could see the elevators. Well, his department was on the exact opposite. I mean, literally, I could spit down the hall at him, okay? And so when he would come out, he'd go to the elevator, and I've never seen an elevator take so long in my life. Come to find out, he was loitering about the elevator.
Wait on you to come out to go to the elevator.
Eyeballing me. Well, after I figured out that he was doing that on purpose and trying to make eye contact, I was like, oh, I will die before I make eye contact. So I wouldn't look at him. And I was like, what a wolf standing out there. But one night after work, we would go out dancing and whatnot after work. And he was there, and I remember thinking, "Oh, the wolf from the elevator."
Oh, yeah.
But we chatted and we danced and we talked, and I thought, he's not so bad. And so after a while, he finally asked me to dinner, and I went to dinner, and he turned out not to be a wolf.
Yeah.
And we dated for a while, and then eventually he asked me to marry him, and
you
I
said
did.
yes, and the
I
rest
said
is
yes,
history.
and I'm still with him. 6 kids later.
That's it's 6 kids on purpose.
On purpose, from the same dad. Yes, 5 boys, 1
and
girl.
1 girl. Boy, that child.
God love her. God love her.
I've met her. She's
sweet.
strong and she's sweet. That's right.
And normal, we think. So.
Are all of your children normal? All of your children. You tell funny stories about them, but you know.
Heavens to Pete. My oldest is Joshua. Then there's Hunter. Savannah's right in the middle. Then there's Cole and Wade and Drake. And they are all as different as night and day.
I've only ever seen in person Savannah and Wade.
Wade, yes.
Yeah.
Wade's my only musician.
Yeah.
Everyone else is climb a tree, hike a ball, even Savannah. But Wade is more like, I want to run cross country and I want to play a trumpet. So he's my artistic one. The other ones don't have an artistic bone in their body. But Wade did. He got the musical gene and plays the trumpet and liked sports, but just not football and basketball and baseball. He was a runner.
Yeah.
Which is an athlete. I don't want to go on record as saying it's not. That's
now
not
some
a sport.
some people just like to do more of the individualized sports.
Yes.
I remember my brother liked tennis. You know, he didn't want to play basketball or football, but he liked those singular kind of sports.
Yes, yes.
Even baseball is a little easier too because you have your position, you do your thing.
That's right.
You hit the ball. You're responsible for your own success. Now, when you met, what's your husband's name? Steve. Now, when y'all met, you were already a Christian, but you weren't attending church, correct?
I was a Christian that was way far off. I was what you call a Christian who had not worked out their salvation, so to speak. In other words,
your sanctification had kind of stalled out.
Well, I don't think it ever began. But I was saved at 9, but just was not discipled, did not live in a home where Christ was talked about. I think the most I did, and I wouldn't say often, was maybe pray for the food. Yeah. But that was it. So when I met Steve, and Steve too, he was saved as a youngster. But when we both met, we were far away from God. That's why we closed down many a bar and enjoyed the beverages and whatnot. And that's not to get into a whole drinking, not drinking, and whatnot. I'm just saying
it was too much for y'all.
I was gonna say we didn't just have a beer with the pizza. So we definitely closed down many places, and so but we love Jesus. We just called on him when we needed him. I call that flare prayer. I'd send up a flare when things had gotten into a mess, but it was a sweet neighbor who lived next door to us.
Did y'all live down in Atlanta, or had you already moved out this way?
We lived in Stone Mountain, but the Gwinnett part of Stone Mountain. Okay. So a sweet neighbor from Wycliffe Ministries, which is a missionary ministry, lived next door to us. Her name was Thelma Galloway. She turned out to be my mentor. And her children lived all in California, so she's just dying of loneliness over there next door to us. And so here was this cute little young couple, pregnant with their baby, and so she just took me under her wing, and she began to disciple me. I remember back when the Family Christian Bookstore was still open in Stone Mountain, she went and bought a little Bible study book. Couldn't have been thicker than that. And we sat down. I'll never forget. We opened one of the pages, and it said, "Turn to the book of Joel." And I looked at her and I said, "Who in the heck is Joel?"
There's a book called Joel.
I mean, I'd never heard of such. I knew Genesis.
People don't even realize there's a book of Nehemiah. When I tell them my son's name is Nehemiah, they're like, "What?" I'm like, "It's a book in the Bible, people."
I knew Genesis, and I knew Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah. And then so Joel, I was like, "I don't have that book." She's like, "It's kind of here in the middle." So that's the first time I probably opened the Bible in years. And we began to, she was so gentle with me. And God love her, how she put up with me, because I could cuss a cat. Woo! Put a sailor to shame. And so, but I knew not to do that with her. Yeah. Like I knew that. But every now and then it slipped. But she was so patient, and she didn't say, "All right, dirt mouth, you're out. She just let me stay in her home, and we would have Bible study on Wednesday afternoon at
That's
lunch.
awesome.
And she invited me to First Baptist Snellville, and she invited me, and she invited me, and she invited me. And so I told my husband, I said, all right, Steve, I love...
So wait, so you didn't want to go to the church?
Oh, heavens no.
But you liked doing the Bible study with
I
her.
liked being with Thelma.
Yeah.
See, I missed a mother, and she was like Mama.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we baked cookies together. I hadn't baked cookies with my mother forever, and here I was 20-something years old baking cookies with this woman. I loved her. I thought she was so sweet, and she was so soft-spoken, and I'm such a bull in a china shop, still am. And here was this soft-spoken woman who loved me, even if I let a curse word slip. So she began to invite me, and I loved her so much, and I finally told Steve one day, I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shut her up in the sweetest way possible. We're going to go to church. We're going to walk in, we're going to go to church, and it's going to be check, because we're going to do this, and she won't ask again because we did it.
Yeah.
Like we went. So we went to, in the sweetest way possible.
And this is in 1994 that you started coming.
1994.
Okay.
So first time was, I think it was Valentine weekend.
Yeah.
First time. Or the week before Valentine's Day. And so we went. And from other than the church doors blowing off the hinges, okay, because we had not set foot in a church. I hadn't set foot in church since I was 12 or 13. So after we had to put the church doors back on the hinges from the shock of us showing up, we went in. Dr. James Merritt was the pastor, and I cried from the moment the orchestra started to the moment it was over. And cried and cried. I don't even know what they taught on, but I was so far away from God. I mean, I'd barely gotten started with the Lord. So I cried and cried and cried. I mean, snotting and snorting.
Yeah.
And Steve was like, honey, it's all right. And I'm like, but
let me ask you this. Did you feel like so happy, like you felt like you were home, or did you feel so sad that you were far from God, or kind of was it both? Or?
I think I was so emotional because whatever he spoke of resonated with me. Yeah. The music was so beautiful. And I wouldn't say I felt like at home because I don't know what that felt like. Yeah. But
did you?
It felt safe.
Yeah.
It was safe, and it felt good.
And had you coming into that experience been thinking it was going to be negative? Had you been thinking I'm going to feel judged or I'm going to be bored or?
I think I thought,
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to go to church? I mean, I was thinking,
boring.
Oh my gosh, they're going to play some hymnal thing that's going to be like, we're going to pull out a hymnal surely. And I don't know what I thought. I don't know. I hadn't been in church. I don't know. But what I thought was not what First Baptist was. Yeah. This was a Baptist church, but as close to Pentecostal Baptist as I had ever seen. I mean, when that music started and the drums, they had drums. They had drums in a church. And they started with the percussion, and the choir was just, I mean, when they started, my hair went straight back. I think they sang a Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir song. I didn't know what that was at the time. But I was like...
Midnight Cry.
Oh, my gosh. I had never heard music like that in church. And I looked at Steve and I thought, where are we? and I was like, oh, yeah, we're joining. And he's like, we're not joining. We don't even know the name of this pastor up here. We came the next week without her even asking. Yeah. And it was so funny because you know what? God shut me up. I'm going to shut her up. And God was like, oh, no, sister. Yeah. We're shutting you up. And we came the next week and we walked forward and recommitted our lives to the Lord and joined on February 14th, I believe, 2000. I want to say it's 14.
Now, were you pregnant or had you already had your first child?
All right, so it couldn't have, no, wait a second. When did we join? We joined in 1994.
That's what you said.
Yeah, I don't know where 2014 came from.
That went over my head. I wasn't lining to 2014.
I was thinking I've been the Newman's director longer than that. All right, so math usually was my strong point. I guess not then. 1990, February 1994 is when we joined the church. Now, we attended here for 3 years, And we were what you call once a month church members.
Yeah.
We tried to come twice a month. That was good. But here again, we hadn't darkened the doors of church since Lord knows when.
Well, and I know if your life has not been with church being part of the rhythm,
yes,
it's hard to suddenly you're like, oh, I got a plan for this Sunday.
Yes.
Oh, I can't go to church today.
Yes.
I'll try next
week.
You're
tired. I mean, you sleep in. That's your day off.
Yeah.
For crying out loud, right? So we were twice a month, and I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then in 1997, we joined what they call the Sunday school class. It goes by so many names now. Small
life
group, life group, I don't know. It was Sunday school.
Yeah.
And we joined a Sunday school class. And that's where I connected with other women walking with me. Now, I'm on my fourth baby now. So we joined a class that had young
children.
Now
in 1997, not right now.
Not right now.
You're done with babies now.
Glory be, yes. That sent me quite on over the edge. 1997, Cole was born, and he was like 3 months old when we joined the Sunday school class. And they were so sweet, and I remember thinking, like, they're really sweet. But I was struggling with, I don't belong here. I don't fit in. I don't have the clothes you've got. I don't have the money you've got. I don't have the houses you have. I don't have the cars you have. And that was just something God was going to have to work on in time. I mean, he had a lot to work on.
Yeah.
I mean, we started with the language first because, like I said, I could cuss a cat.
Did you ever have any moments in church where you said something and you're like,
oh, yes, of
I'm
course.
going to go home now?
I did. In fact, sadly, it was later on when it was 2000. So, I mean, 2001,
Yeah.
I fell down the stairs. I was 8 months pregnant with Drake, my last one, and I fell down the stairs belly first and said the S word.
Oh, I would have said it
Sure. I did a baseball slide down the stairs into the back of this man's legs, and my dress came up over my head, and I said the S word as loud as I could while Dr. Merritt was preaching. There you are. How about that? For your women's director.
You've got grace, especially in a situation like that. That's the hardest for me. I will say, I'm not a cusser. I don't cuss like on the regular, but when I hurt myself or stub my toe or something like that, that's when I will say.
I could not have said, why didn't they just mic me up? I said it so loud. And again, the dress up over the head is probably why I said it, because who wants to see that 8 months pregnant? That was probably caused permanent blindness to people.
Probably didn't pay any attention to what you said because they were worried that this pregnant woman had fallen and she was going to go into labor right there or something.
I'm telling you, it was very humbling, very humbling. And so, yes, I did have let curse words spill at the church house.
That's right. So tell me, like, then after 1997, when y'all joined the Sunday school class, kind of, well, first of all, you said everybody was so nice. And did you find that really changed your life some more or contributed strongly to your growing in Christ and all that?
Yes, it did. I put my son in the weekday preschool here.
Which son?
Number 2 son, Hunter,
Okay.
Went into the First Light weekday preschool, and I began to meet more mothers, and turns out that the ones coming to the First Light weekday preschool attended here. So I began to form relationships, which was wonderful. And I began to see that there was a lot of unhealthiness in my own life. And so I had done a little bit of counseling before that just to deal with the neglect and the abuse from my childhood. But my family decided to follow me from Texas. So they all packed up, my mom and brother, and my grandmother, and they all followed me to Atlanta, and decided to move in down the street from me. So
had your grandmother gone to Hawaii and then she came back to Georgia?
She came back to Georgia.
Good Lord.
So she ends up living on the same street as me, and then my mother not far from me.
Yeah.
And because they were codependent and dysfunctional, and I had grown up in dysfunction, I'm now around other people who don't seem that way, and I'm like, this is different.
Yeah.
So the current women's director at the time was Jerry Sisk, very lovely woman, and one of my mentors as well. And she recommended a book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
I think John Townsend wrote it with him. And she said, this book is going to do wonders. And it did. It's about setting boundaries in your family. And I do this little thing with my hands because it's like you put a fence around your life. Because when you're 18 and you're 13, you don't get to choose what you have in your home. Okay, it is what it is. You're a minor child. I'm in my 20s. I'm having children. I'm on number 4 child. I get to decide my life now. And for the first time, I thought, I don't want that. Don't come around here selling crazy because I'm all stocked up, you know. And so I decided that I need to get healthy. Well, that's a journey. That's not like you read a book and like, okay, healthy.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It took a long time to practice this. And Beth Moore says a great quote, which I may not quote entirely perfect, but she makes a quote that says, you would think in a family pileup that when you get out of that, everyone would be happy for you. But they're not. Because what you're saying is something's wrong with you. That's what they hear. That wasn't what I said.
Because they're like, we're not in a pileup.
What's the problem?
What are you saying about us?
What are you saying?
Yeah.
So I decided I had got to set boundaries around my life. I don't want drunkenness in my home around my children. I don't want perverse talk in my home around my children. So I began to set these boundaries, these little boundaries around my house and around my children and around my life, and they were not received well. And there was huge pushback. And someone has to be to blame. So who do you think the first person was?
Well, you, obviously.
Well, no, I can't blame me. I'm
Steve?
the daughter. Steve. Oh, yes. So that husband of yours. So he was the problem. And then when that didn't work, then it was the church. That church.
They've put some crazy ideas in
That
there.
crazy.
They've made you judgmental.
Church.
You become just like them.
What kind of church are you going to? So between Steve and the church, and then your friends, those friends of yours, those fanatical friends of yours, but someone had to be the blame. And they didn't really want to blame me, and they certainly couldn't blame themselves. So it was one of the harder journeys. I mean, it was as hard as the abuse and neglect I had, was trying to figure out how to get out of this pit, out of this family pileup. So at this point, I have to decide that it doesn't matter if you're mad at me or not.
Yeah.
I have got to get healthy, and I have got to make sure that I do not perpetuate anything that was done to me. Got to break the cycle. Got to break the pattern. So that's what I did, and it took a long time, and I would love to give you, Rachel, a happy ending story and they all accepted it, and we held
accepted
hands.
Jesus,
Yes, and we held hands and sang Kumbaya. They never got okay with it, and it eventually caused a rift between my mother and I, and then between that rift and her getting a new boyfriend who turned out to be a deadbeat, she quit speaking. And it was very sad. And so my grandmother ends up having to go into a nursing home. She fell. And so I'm taking care of her in the nursing home. I'm taking care of my grandfather in the house because he stayed in their house. And I'm taking care of him. And then I still have, 6 children, a husband, 2 or 3 dogs, and a mother who's not speaking, and a brother who's having marital issues. So it just wasn't the best time, but again, you got to get healthy. You got to get healthy, and so I was going to get healthy, and I did, and I think it's a lifetime journey. I don't know that you can check it off. I mean, wouldn't that be great if you could? Because God just takes you to the next thing.
I've achieved health.
I've achieved health. Here I am. That's not so, but I am healthier.
Yeah.
And I would say the biggest challenge came when I got a phone call in November, and the hospital says you need to come up to the hospital.
In November of when?
That's a good question.
I was like, not last November.
No. It's been a few years. It's quite a few years. And so I said, well, no, you can just call the boyfriend, because we're not speaking. So, I mean, she doesn't want me around. And the nurse said, no, we need next to kin. Well, that's never good when next to kin is a term that's used. So I went to the hospital, and she's dying. And she had been an alcoholic, and it had pickled her liver. I put her in hospice on Friday, and by early Sunday, she died.
Wow.
And But
Was
I
she
stayed
conscious
with
during that time?
her. So when she went into hospice on Friday, she was still speaking. And I was thinking, what a great opportunity for her to make it right.
Mm.
Because I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
We're going to have our moment.
We're holding hands. Kumbaya is coming. And she didn't.
Mm.
And by Saturday morning, she was unconscious. So I sat by her bed and talked into her ear. I was told hearing's the last to go. So I sat by her bed and I talked and I talked. If she could have come to, she probably would have told me to be quiet. But I talked and she said, she didn't say anything. I said, Mom, I love you and we're okay. We're okay. It's all okay. And she died early Sunday morning, early Sunday morning. So that was December 21st she died, right before Christmas. There ought to be a law that you cannot die around a holiday.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there just should be. So fast forward 8 months later.
Yeah.
Okay. So 8 months later, my brother, who, by the way, is extremely codependent with her.
Oh, yeah.
Because codependency is something that just gets carried on. So you have codependency between my mother and her mother. And then I broke the codependency, which didn't go well. They weren't happy about that. But my brother's still very codependent. And he had packed up and moved back to Texas. We have a tendency to run from our problems, as you can see.
If he was happy at some point in his life there, that's what he wants to go back to.
So we went back to Houston, and on September 12th, he put a .357 to his head and killed himself on the apartment deck. And
was he still married at that point, or was he divorced?
He was separated from that point, and he was 36 years old. And it broke my heart. Yeah. Broke my heart. So in 8 months, I lost 2 family members.
That would put you at about my age, because I'm 41, and if you're, 5 years older than him or so?
Yep. So it was very sad, very tragic, and I was estranged from my dad, had been for years. So, and not a bad estranged, just...
We don't really know each other, kind of.
2 strangers. Yeah. 2 strangers. So, I don't want a truck to hit him or a boulder to fall on him, nothing like that. But we were estranged. And so thus began some more healing, But death has a way, if you don't hold bitterness, death has a way of bringing good memories. Now, you can hold bitterness and still be extremely unforgiving and extremely mad. But I didn't. I went the other way. I think of funny things and things that make me laugh. I don't think of the hoo-ha.
Because it doesn't help anybody. People who feel like that, who get angry when someone dies, because they're like, and now I can never bring them to justice. Now they'll never answer for what they did to me. And it's like, and you're going to be hurting for the rest of your life as long as you're holding on to that.
And then at some point, and who would even know at this point, it's such a woven tale, I ended up becoming a women's director here at the church.
So had you, kind of leading into that, had you been just volunteering and helping lead things? And
I really was on staff off and on since 1999. I'd be on staff, I'd be off staff. I'd work part-time, I'd work this. I was Vacation Bible School director for 13 years. Oh my gosh, the most fun ever. Yeah. And we had a crowd, a slew of kids that would come. Did that for 13 years, worked in preschool and children's ministry off and on for the 13 years, and worked in women's ministry, teaching Bible study and did the prison ministry. Yeah. Very, very plugged in, and really had thought that I'd probably veer a little more toward children's ministry because of my experience with VBS, and I would step in and help during interim times in between when a children's director was out and whatnot. But God ended up putting me with women, which was interesting because I had had such a hard time in all my female relationships that why put me with women? Glory be, right? I'd probably have been a better men's director,
Well, and a lot of times women's directors and ministers and women's ministries in church get kind of pigeonholed into this, like, I want to say flowery or really ultra feminine, very quiet and subdued,
Yes.
like. And of course, you do the women's flowery things. You do like the holiday tea and these things that women enjoy doing, especially if they're frilly kind of women. But I think a lot of times because of that, women's ministries get kind of the short end of the stick, and when it comes to like serious Bible study.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because when before I became women's director, I felt like God had called me to it,
Mm-hmm.
but it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out, why hasn't this happened? Like, he's called me to it, but it hasn't happened. And I was very much pigeonholed into that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, I know what a women's director looks like. First of all, she's probably gonna, this is so not true. This is so not true. Probably gonna have very short hair. Gonna always wear one of those cute little jackets and have the jewelry just at perfection. And gonna talk very slow and soft-spoken, because the fabric on this couch is so lovely. And thank you so much for being here, Rachel. And I thought, now how do I do that?
Mm-mm.
And so for a long time, I kept thinking that was going to be what I was going to be. Now, Jerry Sisk wasn't really like that, but she definitely had a composure about her.
No, was she before you?
Yes. Well, she was a couple before me.
Okay.
But she was definitely, I don't know. I was trying to mix what I thought Jerry was with the next girl who had come along,
Yeah.
And it's just not me. And I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
God didn't put me in at that time. I would have tried to have been a pretty good Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably tried to have been a good Marlene or a good Sarah. That's what I would have tried to be. And God, by the time we got to this point, God had put me in a place in my life where he was like, I don't need you to be anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to be Jennifer Cook.
Yeah.
And I need you to be the best Jennifer Cook you can be.
Yeah.
And the Jennifer Cook that I am is a football-loving gal, a high heel wearing woman.
Mm-hmm.
If I can remember the earrings, that's a bonus.
I was like,
Okay.
I gotta put on some jewelry today, otherwise I forget.
I normally have my nails done just because of videoing.
Yeah.
But other than that, and they're not done because I haven't been brave enough to
keep
go to
mine
the
pretty
nail
short.
salon. But normally and the only reason I do that is because it looks better on film.
Yeah, yeah.
But other than that, I am a bull in a china shop.
Mm-hmm.
I fall more times than I walk. I'm always falling up a stair, down a stair, through a stair. My office has NFL stuff in it. Mm-hmm. My favorite color is navy blue. I love black. I wear football jerseys to church on Sunday. That's me.
Yeah.
That's me, and I'm very transparent. I'm not soft-spoken at all. If anything, I'll notice in a crowd my voice is booming, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm screaming, and no one's telling me.
I'm the same way. My parents used to be like, when I would go somewhere, as I was leaving the house, they would say, now, Rachel, don't be loud.
Don't be loud. That's right. That's me.
I can't help
That's
it.
me. And I cut up. I'm funny. I may not be funny, but
You're funny to yourself.
But I'm funny to me. I have a very dry, off sense of humor. I laugh at things that I have no business laughing at. It's terrible sometimes, but that's who I am. Mm-hmm. And I like my hair long, and I like it curly, right? And sometimes it looks like I just crawled out of bed, and that's okay too. And I am, for the first time, comfortable in my own skin.
Good.
And so that's why when people come to like my Bible studies and they don't come back, I'm okay with that, because you know what? I'm not for everybody. Yeah. I'm not for everybody.
And plus, God is in control. He's following that person. Even if they're not at your Bible study.
That's right.
Hopefully, you pray he's leading them to someone else.
And I love women.
Yeah.
And I used to not like them.
Well, that's good.
I didn't like them because I felt insecure about them.
Yeah.
I never felt like I could be one of them. I never felt like I belonged. I never felt like I fit in. I always felt like the square peg for the round hole. Mm-hmm. And in a way, I still am, but I'm okay being the square peg. I'm just okay with it.
Awesome.
I just am. And I make mistakes, and I do things I shouldn't do, and I say things I shouldn't say. I'm not a perfect wife. I'm not a perfect mother. I'm not a perfect women's director. But what you get from me is a woman who loves Jesus, whose heart is aimed toward him, who wants to do it right. My want to is it's spot on.
And I think because of everything you've been through in your life, you give a lot of grace to other women who may be struggling for this reason or that reason.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. 1 Corinthians.
It makes you a safe person.
It does.
Right.
And 1 Corinthians 10:12 is a big verse for me. Those who stand, take heed lest you fall. Because I'm telling you, I'm just one step away from a fall, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm one step away from being a lousy mother and a lousy wife and a lousy women's director. So I'm like everybody else. I haven't arrived. Philippians 1:6 says, the work God began in me, he will complete. He has not completed it. But I would like to think that I've moved a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little. And I love being Jennifer Cook. I love being the wife of Steve Cook.
Yeah.
I love having 6 kids. I had them on purpose, every one of them. Yes, I know what causes it. Yes, I can't afford them.
People ask me that on my third
gosh.
child. They're like, you know what happened? How this happens, right?
And
I'm
you're
like,
oh my gosh, I'm not 18 in the back of a car, right? I know what causes it. I can't afford them, and I had them on purpose.
Yeah.
So all the questions, you get asked, and I'm a grandmother now, best club ever. And I love that. I have 7 grandchildren right now.
Really?
Yes.
Golly.
And I love that. And I love working in ministry, serving in women's ministry. And for me, it's not work. I open this place and I close it most of the time. And I don't do that to impress anyone. I do it because I love it. I can't believe God allowed me to serve him. Because I got to tell you, I wouldn't have chosen me.
Yeah.
From my family background, no way.
There's a Charles Spurgeon quote about that, about God choosing us. And if it's like, and knowing me, through my whole life, I wouldn't have chosen me.
I was riffraff.
Yeah.
Our family was called white trash back in the day when I was growing up. And I had no idea. I mean, that is so offensive. I didn't know. I'm like, white trash? You're talking about me. But God took this white trash, riff-raff, bull in a china shop girl, and he wiped me off, dusted me off, and used me. Yeah. And that's what I hope he does until he's done with me.
Tell everybody, we're going to wrap up here in a minute, but tell everybody about your ministry, websites, and I'll put all that in the description below this video on YouTube anyway, but just, I have a Facebook page, I have this ministry, I have this and that. And
Perfect. Well, as women's director, of course, I always tout women's ministry first. And we do have a First Baptist Church Women's Ministry Facebook page, and we have a First Baptist Church Moms Ministry Facebook page. And we just put quotes and happenings. It's not over posted to ad nauseum. We have something on our church website, fbcsnell.org / I think it's living room. I don't think it's online living room. It's called living room. And if you click on women's, I post a video and a devotion and a quote every, it's usually up by Thursday. Yeah. And sometimes Wednesday, but every Thursday. And then because I go out and I speak outside of this, I set up an own ministry called Jennifer Cook Ministries. And it's not to take away from the women's ministry. Yeah. It's just kind of more of an insurance thing. Yeah. You have to carry your own insurance, you know. And so when I go speak, even though I may be coming with a connection to First Baptist Snellville, I put it under Jennifer Cook Ministries. Yeah. And so I can do conferences and events and any sort of speaking thing. And I have a Facebook page as well as a website for Jennifer Cook Ministries.
And then every Thursday morning here at First Baptist of Snellville, here we're on Highway 78. So if you are anywhere within 20 or 30 minutes of this location, tell us about moms.
We have moms. We used to start at 9:30 pre-COVID. Yeah. But right now during this COVID epidemic, we bumped it up to 10 o'clock. We do social distancing, so you're not sitting on top of anyone. And we have round tables, and I usually have somebody sing, do a few songs, Rachel's actually done that for me, which was wonderful. And you have somebody sing 2 or 3 songs, and then we do a lesson. And that's every Thursday. We follow Gwinnett County calendar, so we're off when they're off. So every Thursday at 10 o'clock. And then on Wednesday night, I teach a class at 6:30 p.m. And it is every Wednesday night, again, following Gwinnett County. We're off during spring break and things like that. And there are 2 separate lessons because I have ladies that come to both. Yeah. So that's fun.
And hopefully we'll be able to put food back on the potluck. You know, it used to be that we would come and we would have a potluck for moms, and I hope that we can do that again one day. But
yes, the food's important. I had a lady one time say, I just come for the food. And I'm like, oh, well, there you are. And you know what?
Well,
that's
at least you hear the word of God while you're
hearing the word of God while you're chewing. So, yes, I'd love for you to come. And I make a deal with people. You come one time, and if you don't like it, you don't have to come back. That's right. Nobody signed you up for life.
No one's going to call you and say, well, I noticed you haven't been back.
I haven't been. In fact, I will not show up at your door.
Would you like to explain yourself?
Yeah, that's right.
So thank you so much for sitting down with me or letting me come to you. We're actually at First Baptist of Snellville. I got this whole setup, and I've taken pictures and I'm posting them on my Instagram because everything else I've done has just been low key, like with my iPhone or like I said, screenshotting a video chat on my computer.
Well, I got to tell you, I want to tout this if that's okay. I did not put this together. That is not my gift at all. But I use Micro Productions, and
we'll put the link.
Yes, Micro Productions. I met Mike when Mike did something very simple for me, which is take my 8mm video cameras. Remember those?
Wow, yeah.
And put them on CD because I didn't want all my baby. When the kids were babies.
And you can't watch it anymore once the technology
So he did that for me. And then come to find out, he's quite specialized. He does weddings and does different things. I have no idea of his schedule, so I don't want to, tell you that he'll be there next Saturday for your wedding. But he is behind Jennifer Cook Ministries. And when you see the Jennifer Cook Ministry videos, which are on YouTube, they look professional because they are.
Yeah.
And so Micro Productions, thank you, Micro Productions, for this wonderful setup. It, as usual, is done with excellence. So, yeah.
Well, thank you all for watching, and please like this video and give me some comments and become one of my subscribers.
Good ones only, please.
I know, yeah, good comments. But you know me, I will respond to comments that people leave on my YouTube videos, and I want to thank Jennifer Cook for sitting down with me today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
We'll see y'all later.